Hello everyone, once again here, and today I want to talk about the new cards that have been revealed so far of the Boomsday project. Want to do my weekly review on the cards that have been revealed. We are very close on the Boomsday now. It is just a week and then the Boomsday will be there for us. We kind of start to get a good feel on all the cards, and that is what I want to talk with you about. The first new card that was revealed was the Pogo-Hopper. 2 mana 1/1, Battle Cry, gain +2/+2 for each other Pogo-Hopper you play this game. 2 mana 1/1, also a mech, what is makes it kinda interesting as it being a mech for the rogue class. Mechanic is kinda fun as it kinda puts a little bit back the Jade Idol mechanic or any mechanic of the more you play the better it becomes. Rogue has quite a lot of cards that can put additional cards of it into your deck. You can also shadow step the card and you can do a lot of stuff with the card to make multiple Pogo-Hoppers going. And well, maybe we'll even get a little bit more support for the card. Maybe there will be a day, guys, where Rabbit Rogue is a thing. I just like the name, so I really hope Rabbit Rogue will ever become a thing. In general, I think it might be a little bit too hard now for the card to get work in the current set. But we have seen for Rogue already some support towards it. We have seen the 2 mana card that puts 3 extra copies of it in the deck. Well, if you put 3 extra Pogo-Hoppers in the deck, they keep gaining additional stats with cards like Shadow Steps and more of the Boommaster effects maybe. Maybe it can be a card in that aspect also in the future for like a Quest Rogue deck. But I think there is a lot of potential possible for Rogue. I think it might be a little bit too hard yet to make it work, but I kind of like the concept of the Pogo-Hopper. Maybe there will be a time where Rapid Rogue can be a thing, guys. Rapids in Hearthstone. I like the art. The art is definitely one of the best parts of this one. Next up is the Omega Assembly. Omega Assembly is the Omega card for the Warrior as a 1 mana spell. Discover a mech. If you have 10 mana crystals, keep all 3 cards. When I was looking at this card, I was like, that's a very strong card. 1 mana, discover a mech is already okay. We have now been having the discover mechanic for like almost 2 years in Hearthstone. And I start to realize, or I start to see that I think like paying 1 mana for discover is very often okay. And can definitely make cards strong enough. So 1 mana discover a mech is already decent. But then, if you have 10 mana crystals, keep all 3. So suddenly you can keep all the 3. We have seen that a Warrior might be the class that probably got the most support towards the mech. We have had already quite some few mechs for the Warrior class revealed. We have seen Dr. Boom being revealed. And imagine just being in Dr. Boom, discover a mech and knowing that the mech that you discover can directly rush into something. I think there is a lot of potential. If there will be a mech deck viable, I think the first class that will be playing mechs is Warrior. It really seems like Warrior is the class that is gaining the most support towards the mech. And it's kind of hard to review all the mechs yet because we just don't know what the additional mechs will be. Maybe there are gonna be like 1 or 2 broken mechs cards coming out in like the last week, and suddenly the mech archetype looks very strong. I think it's already a decent archetype mech with the current mech set. But I feel like if there will be 1 or 2 very good mechs in the early game, it could really push a lot. Because that's where I find the weakness a little bit compared to like Murlocs. So I hope that we will see some. This card is definitely very good. 1 mana discover is just a good card. Or just a fine card. And if you have 10 mana crystals, keep all 3. I think it's one of the stronger Omega cards revealed so far. And I definitely think this is a card that Warrior can consider playing. Next up is a Druid card, Gloop Sprayer. Let's first look at the stats of the card. 8 mana, 4/4. I don't think we will ever consider playing an 8 mana 4/4. We are like overpaying this card by like 5 mana, almost. So the overpay on this card is very, very high. So what is the effect that has to make it great? Battle Cry, summon a copy of each minion that is next to it. There are some very strong combos you can do with this card. just having like 2 strong minions on the board, especially if they have like additional effects at the end of the turn, can be very strong, or like with melee gods or anything. Quest Route can be like a deck where it might get played in. So there is quite some potential with this card in the way of how it can synergize. Also, like, just consider a Twig play. You go with the Twig, you get 10 additional mana crystals, and suddenly you can copy minions from it. So there is a lot of potential with the deck. I just struggle a little bit with the card as you pay 8 mana. And 8 mana is a lot. Like, 8 mana for this effect is just a lot. If you compare it to Faceless, that might only copy 1 minion. Like, how often do you have 2 minions where you can play this one in the middle of it to get like both of the effects going? I think it's very hard to make this card work in a way where you get the full value out of it and the additional value that, for example, the Faceless doesn't provide you with. And I think that might be a little bit too hard to really make work. It's a very expensive card. The cost is very high on this card. It really has to get played in like a big route, a quest route, I feel, to see play, as the cost of the card is just as high as the cost of a big minion. And that's a little bit where I feel it might get a little bit hard to make work. But there are some strong combos possible, and we have seen a lot of potential combo cards with the druid that we will go next to, that maybe can make it a little bit better work. Next up, Crystology. 2 mana Paladin spells, and these kind of cards are always a little bit the sleepers of the set. 2 mana Paladin spell, draw 2 1 attack minions from your deck. So what we basically have here, if you make your deck a little bit around that, is a 2 mana draw 2 cards. 2 mana draw 2 cards can be pretty good for Paladin if you can play it in a more control based deck, as in an aggro deck you might want to still like play cards like Divine Favor. Draw 2 1 attack minions from your deck is a card that is very synergized on just the attack phase, so you have to make your deck a little bit around it. But think about cards like Tar Creeper. If you think about Tar Creeper, play this at turn 2 and draw your Tar Creeper to follow the things up. It can be like a little bit of a thing to make it maybe work in like a control Paladin archetype. You can also draw your Linessa, for example, what is also a good card. You can draw Stonehills. So there are a lot of cards that you can play in a more mid-range control Paladin that are actually pretty good here. So the great thing what I like about this card is you can play this card in combination with Call to Arms, but not ruin your Call to Arms. With the Call to Arms summoning like your 2-drops. And if you make your 3-drops just being the 3-drops like Stonehill Defender, Tar Creeper and Linessa, you can actually make this, or Bolvar, you can actually make this quite well work in a mid-range or control Paladin. If we will see it play, I'm not sure, because 2 mana draw 2 cards is strong but not broken. That will be a little bit interesting to see, but Paladin is a class that kind of likes to get a little bit card draw. It's not a class that draws a lot. It's not a class that needs to draw a lot, because normally the curve goes pretty high up. But I can see a lot of potential in like the OTK and mid-range Paladin decks I have been playing. If you just play your Call to Arms and you focus mainly on your like 2 and 3 attack minions, you probably don't want to play Rightness Protector, for example, but play like Beetles, play other strong, maybe play Millhouse, and then play this card as like a way to draw Stonehill, Tar Creepers, Bolvar, Linessas, cards like that. Maybe it can be a good enough card to just play as a one-off, and then a 2 mana draw 2 can something maybe a little bit beneficial for the Paladin. Next up is the Hunter Legendary. Hunter Legendary of the set is Boommaster Flark. 7 mana 5/5, Battle Cry, summon 4 0/2 Goblin Bombs. And the 0/2 Goblin Bombs are all cards that deal, if I'm correct, 2 damage to your opponent. So they are 0/2s with the death rattle of deal 2 damage to your opponent. Little bit reminding on a little bit of like a Dr. Boom kind of card, but one big thing to know is that the Goblin Bombs are not able to attack themselves directly, as they have only 0 attack. Do they deal 2 damage? So 7 mana 5/5 is a little bit of an overpayment of the card, I would say. But for a hunter to make... It's very powerful for a hunter to summon 4/0/2 Goblin Bombs that deal 2 damage to your opponent's face. And if you combine that for 4 times, so what this card can do is it can be in 7 mana 5/5 deal 8 damage. And that's not bad, 7 mana 5/5 deal 8 damage. You need to have a little bit synergy to make it work, because you can play cards like Void Ripper, you can play cards like Mossy Horror to make it work. So maybe you can already play this card in like the more Egg Hunter decks that have been around. And you can also have a little bit better synergy. Think for example about like triggering additional battle cries with some of the cards to deal more face damage. The card is a little bit aggressive as it really wants to push damage in the face. But I can see this working in like an Egg Hunter deck. Also the Goblin Bombs are all mechs, so there is a little bit extra synergy in the mech package towards it. You can play cards that help these mechs supporting a little bit. You can magnetic them, so you can eat the Goblin Bombs with your magnetic cards, make your minion even stronger and deal 2 damage to the face. I think the power level of this card is definitely there. It's not gonna be a card that maybe gets played in every hunter deck, but if you take your deck around it, there's definitely a lot of benefit to this card. And I will definitely, if I will have to rate this card like out of 5, I would probably give it like 3 or 3.5, as I really think this card is gonna get played in hunter. Face damage is always a thing for hunter. At the end of the day, the hunter has one thing, and it wants to just go face and kill you, because that's just what the hero power is around. It's just very beneficial, even for the Egg Hunter decks that are now around. They are pretty aggressive in the way that they hit your face. So I can definitely see this card getting played, and the more cards that will be revealed, the stronger this card I think will become, especially if the magnetic mechanic can also be a thing. And here, next up, Eternium Rover, a very, very interesting card, as it is a 1 mana card, a 1 mana 1/3 mech. Whenever this minion takes damage, gain 2 armor. So, where you might not directly take a look at this card of being like too insane as it's just a 1 mana 1/3, this is a very strong card, guys. This is a very, very strong card. 1 mana 1/3 mech works with the magnetic mechanic, is a mech itself. It's a card that also is a warrior card that probably has the most support towards mechs. And if the mech archetype will be a thing, this card will be very good. This card will be very good in the warrior. This is a very, very solid 1-drop. The stat line is comparable to like a Dire Maul. We all know how good like Dire Maul kinda is. But it even has a beneficial effect. Whenever this minion takes damage, gain 2 armor. I mean, might not be an effect that is too important if the deck goes too aggressive, but it's a very good card if you can make it together with other mechs. And also, a stat line like this is very good with magnetic. If you have a stat line like 1/3 and let's say a 2/2 magnetic guy eats it, it suddenly becomes a 3/5. And the more health on the card, the better it is for the magnetic mechanic. And this is a very, very solid card towards it, as it just has a 1/3 stat line for only 1 mana. I think as we also have seen like some additional magnetic mechanics also for the warrior already, and Dr. Boom being revealed, I think this is a card that you will insta play in your warrior deck. If you play your deck that has like mech synergy, this is like an insta include. It's a very solid 1-drop, helps you in the early game, maybe only in like the very, very valuable late game metas. This card is just a bit too not doing enough. But this card is definitely a very, very good 1-drop. Probably one of the best 1-drops we have in the game. We have a lot of 1-drops in other classes that are having 1 mana 1/3 stat line, and we know how good they all are. This is definitely not on the power level of a Mana Worm or a Cleric or anything like that, because their effects are a little bit better. But it's you see where this card is going. So I definitely rate this card very high. We'll definitely rate it 4 out of 5, I think, because I think the card itself is good. If it doesn't get played, it's because warrior sucks, mech sucks, or the meta is like not allowing to let you play a 1 mana 1/3. But the card definitely is there. Up next, Mechanical Whelp. 7 mana, 2/2, Death Rattle, summon a 7/7 Mechanical Dragon. So the synergy with this card is really hidden in like the beneficial part of the Death Rattle, and also a little bit maybe towards the magnetic mechanic, as both of the cards are mechs. What is very interesting maybe with this card too is that it has like the Death Rattle, and there are quite a lot of cards, think about Play that can help you with this card getting a lot of additional value. We have seen how good the Egg became in Egg Hunter. It's just a 3 mana 0/5, but it summons a 5/5. Well, this is a 6 mana 2/2, but summons a 7/7. So there's a lot of value towards that. It's definitely a nerf to the evolve mechanic. Definitely hurts the evolve mechanic a little bit for the shaman. I feel every expansion there are cards like this coming out and we are like, yeah, that's a nerf to evolve shaman. Well, evolve shaman not really a big thing anymore, but still like unstable evolution around. The problem what I have a little bit with this card is like 6 mana 2/2. It's very weak. It's also very honorable to like maybe some steel cards like Cabal and all this kind of stuff. So always these cards are a little, if you cannot get these power off directly, it's kind of hard to make work. There is synergy with Play Dead, there is synergy with like cards like Cube that can make this card very strong. Maybe a little bit extra magnetic mechanic can make this card a little bit work. The card itself is just a little too weak for like mech synergy. A mech deck wants to be proactive, and this card is not very proactive. So it really has to be like a lot of additional value. But hey, it's a solid card. I mean, the value is there. It's a 6 mana 9/9 in total. Can definitely get played in like Arena and kind of stuff like that. And maybe we'll see a little bit play if there is a little bit more synergy towards like Death Rattle synergy. As it is a neutral card. It's a neutral card, so we can play it in every deck. Next up, very interesting card for the Hunter. 2 mana 2/1 Fireworks Tech Battle Cry. Give a friendly mech +1/+1 if it has Death Rattle, trigger it. So we already have seen a little bit of mech cards before, if I'm correct, for the Hunter. We have seen the 3 mana magnetic card with Death Rattle of destroying a minion. For the rest, I'm not sure how many mechs are currently having Death Rattles, because this card is a little bit limited in the way that it only works on mechs. But if it works, it's insane. So you have to make your deck around this. It, for example, doesn't work on the Egg, what is like probably getting played the most currently in Hunter. It works on a Meat Wagon, to give a little bit of an example, actually. That's actually a good one. Meat Wagon it can work on. It can work on the bots that have been revealed on the Hunter Legendary. I'm probably missing a little bit, but the Spider Bomb is definitely something that I'm also thinking of as the 3-drop. And there is a little bit synergy possible. The card itself, if it hits, it's already good. Like 2 mana 2/1 gain a gift +1/+1 is already very strong. And also triggering Death Rattle is very strong. So this card definitely is very good in that way. I definitely think it has quite some potential with the Hunter Legendary in that way. If you hit this on the Hunter Legendary, you deal 2 more damage, give a little buff to the mech so it can attack too, and do a little bit additional value on board. So there is quite some synergy in this card, and this card itself is pretty good. I'm just a little worried, does it have enough synergy? Because the synergy is just so limited to only towards mechs. Like, you need to play your Hunter deck with mechs, otherwise it just doesn't work. So it really is another card that really, we have to see what the mechs will be. Will the mechs get there? Hunter is definitely the class that together with Warrior seems to be more in the mech direction. So we'll see if there are going to be a little bit additional cards for this card to make work on mechs. But yeah, cool card. Next up, Eureka! Eureka, the 6 mana Shaman spell card. Summon a copy of a random minion from your hand. Well, That's a crazy card. This really reminds me on Ancestry's Call, for the people that know that card, was a 4 mana shaman card. Puts a minion from your hand on the board and also for your opponent. But it was a very crazy card because it made combo shamans deck work. And I think this deck is gonna get played a lot in a combo shaman deck. This card can be very good if you play, for example, a Malygos shaman deck. Eureka can actually make an OTK deck work. And what you can do with Eureka is, you play Malygos, you summon the Malygos for 6 mana, and suddenly you can play like your Lightning Bolts, your Frost Shocks, and all other cards to make a very, very strong combo possible. It's 2 mana more expensive than Ancestral Call, but Shaman spells are very cheap. So there is a lot of benefit towards that. I think this can make a Malygos Shaman deck work again. Think about it also that you can play this and then you can just Lightning Storm the board for like 7 or 8 AoE in combination with Malygos. So this card you only really want to play with like the insane minions. Otherwise it's just too expensive because you play 6 mana. It's a little bit comparable towards the recruit card for the warrior that is also 6 mana of recruiting a minion. It's very similar to that. It's only like you have to have a minion in hand, but you know what card you're gonna get out of it. You know what minions you have in your hand, so you know when you wanna play it and to make it work. Maybe this is also a cool card in the way of Mecha'thun making it possible, but I think that's a little bit too far. But there are gonna be cards that are like the very, very expensive cards with very, very sick effects. Maybe some very expensive Death Rattle cards can maybe find some play in Shaman 2 with this, as you have like also the 2 mana card that can resummon the card and also on. So I think there is quite a lot of potential for this card. This card can be very good in combo oriented Shaman decks. And next up here is the Boomship. The Boomship is the legendary spell for the warrior. Summon 3 random minions from your hand. Give them rush. Give them rush, rush, rush. So, a very comparable card towards the Dr. Boom a little bit. And a very, very strong card in the way of summon 3 minions from your hand. We know how big decks can become in Warrior. You have seen me playing quite some big decks towards it. Summon 3 minions from your hand. If you only play expensive minions and think, for example, about play the Lich King, play Yip, and play Doctor, or play yourself with Rotface or Ysera, it can become very strong. It's very comparable to the Woo Cleaver, but just way better in a tempo-oriented way. Cards like this can be very strong. The thing is, like, do you want to give all these minions rush? Well, maybe you want. Summon 3 minions from your hand. I think if you only play expensive cards like this, 9 mana card can suddenly put a value on your card for like 27 mana, or maybe 30 mana, or 25 mana. So the swing of this is insane. And think also about, maybe you can even play turret, guys. Hey, how much have we played with the turret? Maybe this card is actually a buff towards Turret Warrior once again. Summon the turret, Grom, and summon an Ysera or something. Give them all rush, have an extra and very good battle cry effect, and get a lot of trades going. How good can a turret with rush be, guys? I am already excited to play this card with my Turret Warrior. Yet this card, like, think about it. Get a turret with rush, get a Rotface with rush, and get another, I don't know, maybe just Ysera or something like that. But Turret and Rotface are 2 cards that are very strong with rush, very strong as getting on the board from your hand. So I can see that. Like, a rush would overrule this can't attack mechanic from the turret, right? At least that is what I suppose. But I'm not sure. Pretty cool card. I think this card can be very good. You definitely have to make your deck around it and you have to play a big deck. I can see this card being very good. Next up, a Missile Launcher. 6 mana 4/4 mech. At the end of your turn, deal 1 damage to all other characters. 6 mana 4/4 magnetic. Direct like Baby Geddon. 6 mana 4/4 Baby Geddon mech. I don't think the magnetic on this card is very good. I mean, you can make this work and just have a, like for example, play the 2 mana 1/5 mech, magnetic that card, and then this card becomes a 6 mana 5/9, or like an 8 mana 5/9 with this effect. It's a neutral card, so you can play this card like in maybe a lot of classes, but I don't see the power level of this card yet. Deal 1 damage to all other characters can be very good, but I don't really feel it's like broken. Dreadlord is like only doing it to your opponent's minions, but it's way stronger, so it's like a more Geddon effect. Doesn't heal, doesn't lifesteal. You need like good synergy on this, but maybe if you can like give this card poison, if you can give this card like something extra, this card can become very good. Can be a decent card maybe with like more mechs and so on. Otherwise I think it's a little bit hard to make work, as the magnetic on it is very expensive, and it's a 6 mana 4/4, so it's not really a card that benefits a lot from pulling additional stats together. What you want with magnetic is like cheap cards with a lot of stat lines. Maybe if you combine it with like the Zilliax it can become good, but then we are like very late in the game to make it work. So yeah, maybe if there will be a card that maybe there are already like some cards around that can give this card like additional effects. Like let's say the Toxic Arrow. It's the only card that comes in my mind for now. But if you give this card Toxic Arrow, you just poison the whole board, have a complete AoE clear. Things like that are maybe that can make this card a thing. Otherwise I think the card is a little too weak. Next up, a very, very crazy card for the Rogue. Academic Espionage. Shuffle 10 cards from your opponent's class in your deck. They cost 1. Poggers. Wow. Wow, wow. Shuffle 10 cards from your opponent's class in your deck, they cost 1. Damn. That's a crazy, crazy, crazy card. And this gotta be a good card, guys. It's got to be like somehow, I'm not sure what for rogue deck you want to play it in, or if there are a lot of rogue decks available you can play it in. But a 4 mana shuffle 10 cards, even they are random from your opponent's class, on average them costing 1 gotta be insane, man. Like when you can put 10 cards in your deck with the cost of 1, and you can play her, and it is for the rogue that can play a lot, it gotta be a very, very strong card. So on average I would say like you might get like 3 or 4 mana cards, or maybe 5 mana cost cards. It's still kinda insane to just play them for 1 mana. Maybe in some kind of like Thief Rogue it can be a thing, things like that, or a Miracle Rogue that just draws a lot. Maybe even with the Rogue Legendary spell. Just play, imagine having this card in your hand, play the Rogue Legendary spell, and then you shuffle 10 cards in your deck again. I'm actually very excited for Rogue this expansion, because you have like a lot of cool decks that you can play. The Rogue Legendary is definitely one of the very insane legendary spells. And in combination with cards like that, you can also cheat on it, where you draw your whole deck and then you suddenly shuffle a lot of extra stuff in your deck that have a lot of benefit on it if you draw them directly. So maybe this card can be a cool thing. Maybe in like an even rogue deck also. A lot of things possible. I'm already very excited for this card. I think this card has to get... this card is definitely has a lot of potential. You have to play it in a miracle way, but man, this card can really become crazy. Next up, the Paladin Legendary. 2 mana 1/2, Divine Shield, Lifesteal, your healing is doubled. So your healing spells are doubled, but also the effects on your healing, for example from your True Silver, are also doubled. Crystalsmith Kangor. So the card itself is an okay card as a 2-mana 1/2 Divine Shield lifesteal. The problem is a little bit like, is this gonna be like the card that Paladin is gonna bring like a control Paladin from like very hard to get played in the current meta towards like a very, very strong archetype. Like lifesteal is not really a mechanic that the more aggro Paladins want to play. So you really, this kind of reminds me a little bit on the Neutron, and instead of the taunt it has lifesteal, what might be a little bit more beneficial. Like there's a lot of value on this card for just 2 mana. You also have very strong things like in combination with Uther, where you can suddenly like lifesteal for 10. You can also play like the 2 mana heal card for Paladin and heal 12. So there's a lot of extra value you can generate with this. It's just like, is this enough? Like, is this enough? A 2 mana 1/2 Divine Shield card. I feel this card needs more support to really make it work. I'm still thinking if there will be like a card for Paladin that is just gonna make Divine Shield Paladin like busted. Like we have seen so many cards for Divine Shield Paladin, but it has never become a thing. It started with like the Bolvar, and we have gotten a lot of like the Glass Knight last expansion. Now we have the Crystalsmith. Like every time there is a legendary with Divine Shield coming, and I'm still waiting for that busted card for Paladin where Divine Shield Paladin will become a thing, because it definitely might. Maybe it gets there one time, you know. But it needs a busted card. I feel it needs a busted card to make work. This card actually synergizes quite well with the Glass Knight, as it has lifesteal itself too. Divine Shield lifesteal, yeah. Maybe at some point. The problem also is a little bit like heal is just not very relevant in the meta. The meta is very control and not aggro at all. Like if the meta will be very aggro, Paladin could be very good with all the heal and Divine Shield effects it has, because the cards are very annoying then. But currently these cards are not getting much played at all. I can see this card maybe in like an even Paladin, in a more control even Paladin, as even Paladins became more control. You can play this card and play Corpse Taker, for example, and your Corpse Taker gets a lot of value. But I think this card needs a little bit more support to really like get the power of the card going. Next here is the comic Anomaly. 4 mana, 4/3 elemental spell damage +2. Reminds me on the Cobalt that was also gave a +2 spell damage. But this body is quite strong, as it is a 4 mana 4/3, so it's not like a card that or Cosmic. Did I say comic? Cosmic Anomaly. Very strong card. This is a very strong card, guys. 4 mana 4/3 with spell damage +2 is an very, very, very solid body for also gaining +2 spell damage. Combine this card with just an Arcane Explosion, and you get a very nice AoE, but just in general, it also being an elemental. Like, it's a very strong card. You probably want to play this in a little bit more of a combo deck. It also synergizes very well with the new mage spell that summons 2 minions and stacks in the cost of these minions if you have spell damage. So another very nice synergized effect there. And I can definitely see this card. This card is a very strong card, and this is definitely a card why Icelands was a problem maybe for the mage. Cards like this will just make like a lot of burn from your hand completely OP. We know that with like the Freeze-Made archetypes that we had before. So Blizzard really wanted to get rid of that, and now they are able to print cards like the Cosmic Anomaly to make a little bit less bursty decks but more controlling mage decks, I think. I can see that like this card is probably not a thing you want to like play in your big spell mages, but more in towards like cheap spells where you get this spell damage effect for very, very strong combos effects going. So I think this deck definitely has potential. It's also an elemental itself, so maybe there are also synergizements with like a Death Knight in that way. Definitely a good card. Next up, Shooting Star. 1 mana, deal 1 damage to a minion and the minion next to it. Well, here a good example, guys. on why spell damage can be very good. Imagine this card saying deal 2 damage to a minion and a minion next to it. Then this card is suddenly a lot better. I definitely think this is a good example on why we might see the Cosmic getting played. This actually might be a card that sometimes can just be much better than the Arcane Explosion if you wanna like play it for cheaper. This kind of looks like the Shooting Star. This kind of reminds me of the Shooting Star video memes we had all around, guys. The Shooting Stars. Alright, I think this card can get some play, but it's not an insane card for 1 mana. It's very comparable to Arcane Explosion, but then it just has 3 minions. But hey, how often are there more minions than 3 minions on the board? So I'm not sure if this card is gonna get much played. Maybe I think a Tempo Spellmage deck is definitely gonna be a thing. Tempo Spellmage deck also can probably be good in a very controlled meta. So I can maybe, if you play this in your Tempo Mage and you play it with the Sorcerer Apprentice and your Mana Worms, cards like this can always be very good. So definitely a card to keep in mind. And here, next up, the legendary for the Priest. Zerek Master Cloner, 6 mana 5/5. If you have cast any spells on this minion, resummon it. 6 mana 5/5. If you Shadow or Death your own minion, it comes back. Oh, what a combo, guys! What a combo. 6 mana 5/5. If you cast any spells on this, resummon it is an alright effect. The problem is it has Death Rattle. The Death Rattle of this card is kind of like a little bit of a problem with it. There are quite some spells that are very good with this. Like think for example about Powerful Shield being a card that, like if you cast any, like it's just not even costing you anything, and you gain yourself another 6 mana 5/5. It's a little bit of a problem that this card is Death Rattle, so it's like kind of slow. And Priest doesn't have like much of the availabilities of playing spells that directly trigger the Death Rattles. I think it also is better that that is not the case, because Priest will become very busted if Death Rattles in Priest will get that direct effect. It's gonna be a little hard. There are some cards possible that have like positive effects on this, so think for example like Powerful Shield. There are a lot of cards that just don't synergize, like Holy Fires and like Shadow or Deaths. I mean, yeah, they can heal this minion, but that's like so not a thing. The card has potential to become very strong if there will be a Priest card that is like a very strong spell that you can play on your minion that synergizes with this Death Rattle. But currently they are not very available for the Priest. So I have a little bit hard time for this card now to make the Zerek work. Its 6 mana 5/5 is a little bit on the weak side, and its Death Rattle is very slow. Can be very good though with like Twilight Skull for example, but yeah, that's like with all the Death Rattles. Shrink Ray. 5 mana, set the attack and health of all minions to 1. So that's kinda Zerek's Ray, kinda in the Ray, or like very similar to Equality, but instead it also puts every attack to 1. So you have here you have kinda a 5 mana Therium here that puts everything to a 1/1. The problem I have with this card is it's either a worse Equality or a worse Therium. And that's the problem of this card. 5 mana is quite expensive, so I don't think this card is gonna find any way to get into Paladin. It's too expensive, this card. It's just strictly either a worse Equality or a worse Therium, no matter what your spot really is. So I don't feel this is the only benefit would be that your opponent has a lot of minions, and so you just wanna only have 1/1s, but normally the Therium makes up for that, as it is a 3/7 itself. You have to pay 5 mana, guys. 5 mana for making everything a 1/1. It's very expensive. it just feels like what the equality does, but the equality has quite a lot of synergy in Paladin that it gets just played. And this card, I think this card is just too expensive. You cannot play this card for 5 mana, it's just too expensive, it's too situational. Cards like this have to be very strong, because they are so situational, and this card is just not there. Next up, Myra Rotspring. Battlecry. Discover a Death Rattle minion, also gain its Death Rattle. 5 mana 4/2, kinda reminds me on the Xaril a little bit, as it had a very similar of an doing a Battlecry and a Death Rattle. This one, discover a Death Rattle minion. So 5 mana 4/2. We are overpaying this card for 3 mana. And then we gain the effect of Battlecry, discover a Death Rattle minion, also gain its Death Rattle. The problem a little bit with this card is it's discover a Death Rattle minion. And the range of discover a Death Rattle minion is so wide. Like, there are a lot of Death Rattles in the game that ain't on the insane power level as some other Death Rattles. So the range of this discover a Death Rattle minion is very insane. You can get very strong effects, but you can also completely miss on the effects and just get a very poor Death Rattle. So I think this card could be very strong, but I just have a little bit of a problem that this range is just too wide on the card, and the stat line is also very expensive. A 5 mana 4/2, guys. Rogue is a class that is very tempo oriented. The class doesn't have heal. The class doesn't have much ways to completely come back, and it needs to snowball the board. And this kinda doesn't. Maybe like you need to play this in like a more Death Rattle Rogue, or like maybe a Test Rogue or whatever, but I just can't see this card work well enough. I hope this card gets played, but I'm a little worried that this card is just too expensive, and that the randomness on the discover a Death Rattle minion is just too huge to get a consistently good Death Rattle on this card and discover a good Death Rattle minion. Next up, Voltaic Burst. 1 mana, 1/1, or 1 mana 1 mana Shaman. Summon 2 1/1 Sparks with Rush. Overload 1. So very interesting card here for the Shaman, as a 1 mana summon 2 1/1s with Rush is definitely a very considerable card. I'm a little bit surprised it got also the Overload, as I don't think the card is that insane that it had to get Overload. Like, this is a card you want to play in a more tempo-based Shaman, but I don't feel like summoning 2 1/1s with Rush is like insane. And there are maybe there is a little bit beneficial part in this being a spell. That can be, this kind of reminds me a little bit on Living Roots, where you had like a 1 mana spell, but the very insane part on Living Roots was that you could use it as 2 damage, and that in Druid you had a lot of synergy where it could be, with a melee gods, become an even stronger card. So yeah, maybe you can also compare it to Elekk, as Elekk was also a very solid card. There's just like, this card is one more expensive. You kind of pay the 1 Overload for the Rush. Of course, Overload you can play with a little bit, as you can Overload on the turns where it might not hurt you too much. I think this is a very good card, for example, also from Hagata, that you can discover. So there is, even if you don't play the card, it's like more of a card also towards Hagata. I can see, I'm not sure about this card yet. I don't think it is going to get played in Shaman yet, but maybe if some more tempo-oriented Shaman it can be a thing, then I can see it being a very spell. I suppose these Sparks might be elementals too, what can be like slightly relevant also. We'll see. And next up is a very juicy card, guys. I got a very juicy card here for you. It is the juicy Psychmelon. 4 mana, Druid spell, draw a 7, 8, 9, and 10 cost minion from your deck. Damn, what a juicy card here. 4 mana, draw 4. We kinda need a little bit more card draw for a Druid, I think, huh? So Juicy Psychmelon is of course a card that can be very good if you play yourself 7, 8, 9 and a 10 cost minion. And there are Druid archetypes that do that. And there is one Druid archetype that really likes to draw a lot so it can switch his deck away to your opponent. Think about Togwoggle Druid, for example. Togwoggle Druid is a deck that wants to draw all the cards, then Togwoggle it away, give your almost empty deck to your opponent, and win that way. And think about this card. Draw a 7, 8, 9 mana card. Draw your Azalina, Togwoggle. Let's find a 9 mana card that might be good in the deck. And your UI. Can be very good in a deck like that. Maybe it can also be a card that can still be very working well in like a Malygos. As you can draw your Lich King, your Malygos and your UI, for example. So there's a little bit of flexibility. Oh wait, it's a minion. Ha 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 ha. I was testing you guys. It's a minion. Seeing if you guys were awake still after already talking for 30 minutes. You can draw your 10 mana minions, like maybe Tyrantus can be a thing, things like that. In Wild there is of course like Kun and a lot more that you can make work. So there's, yeah, minions make it a little bit more because then you have a little bit of a problem on the 10 slot, as only like Tyrantus is kind of like a thing now. I can see it being work, and this card is definitely busted in Wild, where you can, because Togwoggle Druid is already OP in Wild with Aviana, and now you can draw your Azalina, Togwoggle, Aviana, and Kun. Like, come on guys, this card is gonna be like, break Wild to like insane mode. So, very juicy card here, 4 mana draw 4, if you can make it work like that, definitely a very strong card. So, and you can also make some very good combos with, for example, at turn 9, play this in combination with the Boommaster, and you get all the minions on the board, guys, that you draw from this. So there's like some hidden synergy. Maybe you can make this card work with like a Mecha'thun, and you draw the Mecha'thun, and then you just rip your hand somehow away. That's probably too expensive. But yeah, very juicy card here. Next up is the Power Word Replicate. 5 mana, 5/5. Or 5 mana, choose a friendly minion, summon a 5/5 copy of it. So we got here a spell for the Priest that is very comparable to the Faceless Manipulator. It is a 5 mana card, choose a friendly minion, summon a 5/5 copy of it. The difference is that it can only copy a friendly minion, and you summon a 5/5 copy of it. I think this card is kind of weak in the way that it is kind of expensive to make work, and you copy a 5/5. You need to copy like a Ysera, you need to copy a Lich King, cards like that to make it work. There's a little bit benefit in maybe doing it also on like a Cleric sometimes, but I think it is a very, very hard card to consistently make work, as it is a little bit situational, and for situational cards they have to be kind of powerful, and this card is okay, but it's not like broken or like insane. So it's gonna be a hard card to make work. It's maybe a card that can maybe like improve your Lyra in that way of getting a lot of value more towards that. But it's a very, very hard card to make work. I also don't think like Big Priest, like, we know how busted cards are that are currently getting played in Big Priest, and this card is just like kind of meh towards that. There are better cards you can play, so I think it's a kind of too hard card to make work. It's not the greatest card for the Priest to currently play in any archetype. You can play it on the Legendary though. Play this on the Legendary, and you get you played also a spell on the Legendary, so you get like another additional copy of that. That's like a good synergy, for example. Next up, Augmented Elekk. Whenever you shuffle a card into your deck, shuffle in an extra copy. Well, the very solid Elekk here, and it's not that I am very... Maybe this effect of this Elekk is not very insane, but why this card can be very good is because it's a 3 mana 3/4 beast. And a 3 mana 3/4 has always been a very strong thing in Hearthstone. spider tank kind of stat line, is a very popular stat line that is very good in the way of trading towards two other 3-drops and 2-drops. It's a beast itself, so just imagine this card already just playing your hunter deck, maybe your druid deck, things like that. It can already be very decent to just play. And whenever you shuffle a card in your deck, shuffle an extra copy. I'm not sure, like Rogue is a class that wants to do this a lot, so maybe there is a little bit of a synergy in towards that. But I'm just happy, guys, to get back an Elekk in Hearthstone. We got some Elekks back, feels good, man. But yeah, 3 mana 3 fear is a good stat line. Definitely a card that because of the beast archetype too will definitely see like some kind of play in Hunter maybe. Maybe there are other archetypes that we can find this some work in. But I think this card is definitely a very solid card to make work. And maybe there are some cool combos you can make with the shuffle mechanic of the card too. Turn 3 Elekk into turn 4 the darkness, guys. Let's go. Next up is the Necrium Blade Rogue weapon. 3 mana 3/2, trigger a death rattle of a random friendly minion. So we have seen, for example, already the legendary minion for the Rogue being revealed. So there's like a little bit of synergy. What can be, or what is an interesting thing with this card is that the card has death rattle itself, so not battle cry. And I think that can be a little bit of a benefit on this, because if you play this card on turn 3, you hit turn 3, and then you play a 4 mana death rattle card, you can suddenly trigger the death rattle directly. You don't need your death rattle minion to stick on the board. No, you have the option to play your death rattle minion once this weapon dies. So on this side, where normally death rattles being a little bit slow, this has a little bit upside as it is a weapon with this. And this is a decent card. I think this is a decent card. 3 mana 3/2 weapon is alright. We have seen a lot of 3 mana 3/2 weapons that get played very often. Think about the Rallying Blade, for example, that have like slight upsides but can just be very good. It's definitely an upside for Rogue. This is definitely the card that you want to play in more tempo-oriented Death Rattle Rogue deck. And it's kind of hard maybe, because how can you make a Death Rattle deck also being tempo-oriented? Well, we have seen that a little bit in this current meta, where Death Rattle Hunter with the Egg Hunter became a thing, because it was a tempo-oriented Death Rattle deck. I can see this very work. Think about this just with the Egg, guys. You play Egg, or you play this, then you play Egg, and you trigger the Death Rattle directly. Think about Cube, maybe being the best example. Trigger a Death Rattle from the Cube and you get 2 copies. So, there's a lot of synergy possible with this card. You need to have a strong tempo-oriented base, but then this card can be very, very strong. Here up, the next card, the Thunderhead. 4 mana 3/5 elemental. After you play a card with Overload, summon 2 1/1 sparks with Rush. So here we got another card, or here we got the 1 mana card that we revealed earlier, kinda also hidden in this card as a 4 mana 3/5 card itself. And I think this card has more potential than the spell itself. Why does this card have more potential? Well, because it's a 4 mana 3/5, well, this is a pretty solid stat line. 4 mana 3/5 is just an alright stat line itself. And after you play a card with Overload, you summon 2 1/1 sparks with Rush. That's a very decent effect to get going. And there are some Overload cards that are just very nice. I think this card is going to be very good in also Arena, for example, where this card is just so snowbally in the tempo. I am not sure if Shaman has enough support for a tempo-oriented deck, but think with this card, think for example also about Flame Totem, where you play this card, you play another Overload card, and you get 2 1/1 sparks, and you just play the Flame Totem, and they are suddenly 3/1s with Rush. Like, there is a lot of like synergy possible. The question is, can Token Shaman be a thing? Elemental Token Shaman maybe. So play this card, play your Zap, and suddenly you have a Doctor 4, guys. Easy. I think that is how you can make this card work, but this card has a lot of potential. Very strong snowbally card for a more token-oriented Shaman deck. Next up, 4 mana 3/4. is the Storm Chaser. Battle Cry, draw a spell from your deck that costs 5 more. So, it can be a decent card. I'm not sure if this card will ever see like played in like in your Shuttlebox Shaman, because it's a Battle Cry and draw a spell from your deck that costs 5 or more. So you draw your Volcano. Like, this is a 4-mana 3/4 draw your Volcano. That's how I currently look at this card. And Volcano is one of the very strong cards that you sometimes very need at turn 5 or turn 6. So it can be a very, very cool, strong thing. It kind of looks like a Jade guys, doesn't it? It's an elemental, so there's a little bit of synergy in that. We haven't seen the spell or like the legendary spell yet for the Shaman. If the legendary spell will be busted, then you might want to play this card to just draw the legendary spell. You have Eureka, what you can draw, but it's like a very solid card. The problem is like, well, if you drew your Eureka already, well, then this is a little bit dead. So that's a little bit like the backside of this problem. You kind of want to play like 3 or 4 spells, because, well, if you play less, maybe you draw these spells already, and then this card is like not drawing anything anymore. It's gonna be, I would really want to see to what the legendary spell for the Shaman will be. I don't think it has like any extra very strong effect now besides a 4-mana 3/4, make sure you draw your Volcano. And that can be very good because we also have like, for example, the Forge of Souls in Warrior that just says draw your weapons. Well, some cards are very powerful and so important to draw in matchups. And this one, and Volcano is one of them. So in that way it has like some synergy. Next up, Replicating Menace with also Magnetic itself. 4-mana 3/1 Death Rattle, summon 3 1/1 Microbots. So very interesting, because I think this is one of the first, or the first neutral mech with also a very, that is not expensive with a Death Rattle. 4-mana 3/1 is definitely not like the greatest stat line, but it has a lot of potential as it also having a Death Rattle of also mechs. I am not sure if it is like a very, if the magnetic mechanic has like a lot of benefit, because like the Death Rattle is not very insane, but it's a very solid stat line as a 4-mana 3/1 with summon 3 1/1s. It's not very bad. It's like very solid. It's a very solid value you generate out of the card. It's very slow. 4-mana 3/1 is very slow. I'm not sure if there is much of a way to really make like a Death Rattle mech deck work in any way. So I'm not really seeing the very insane power yet, but with a little bit more support maybe the card can get there, but I feel this card is kind of too weak now to really see much play. And next up, guys, the card that I revealed you, the Security Rover, a 6-mana 2/5. Whenever this minion takes damage, you summon a 2/3 mech with taunt. Definitely will say, make sure to watch the card reveal on this one, as a very lovely video and reveal already has been made of this. But how do you make the Security Rover work? The thing how to make the Security Rover work is definitely the effect. Like, the effect on this card is how you want to make this card work. A 6-mana 2/5 is definitely not a stat line that is like very insane. But the effect, whenever this minion takes damage, summon a 2/3 mech with taunt. But what if you combine additional mechs with this card? What if you magnetic the card? It can suddenly become, if you for example do it with a 7-mana card that already is there for the warrior, it becomes an 513 or 512, and you also gain the availability of can be targeted by spells, and suddenly you can generate yourself a lot of 2/3 mechs with taunt. Also a little bit synergy with Dr. Boom, the new hero for the warrior, where you can play this card, you suddenly have a 6-mana 2/5 with rush, and then after making a value trade, your 2/3 also gain rush. Definitely this card wants to gain additional stats from other mechs, because then you generate yourself more 2/3 mechs. That's the way you want to make it work. We'll see if it sees work, because mechs can help support each other a little bit here and there. It is a little bit in the Hogger, Rotface, Gunspire Warrior deck that you can also make it work. If you think of, for example, about the Rotface and Gunspire Warrior decks that I've been playing, where you play a lot of like deal 1 damage board effects, and it can already generate a little bit of value. We'll see if it gets a little bit more support, because I would love a little bit more support for this card. And next up, guys, probably one of the craziest cards revealed so far, Mecha'thun. Mecha'thun is back, guys, and this time a 10 mana 10/10 death rattle. If you have no cards in your deck, hand and battlefield, destroy the enemy hero, win the game. So, well, first you might see this as a card where it's very hard to make work. Well, it definitely is very hard to make work, but what is the benefit? You win the game. You win the game. So the benefit on this card is high. Very high. And that might just make the card already decent, or maybe make the card good enough to see play. Because if this will be a 10 mana 10/10 death rattle with like a meh effect, of course we are not gonna see it play. But a 10 mana 10/10 instantly win the game. Damn, that's the way to play, guys. So there is already a lot of synergies that you can make it being played in. There is what I was directly thinking of, if you play this in a Druid deck, or maybe already in your Malygos Druid deck as your 10-drop. Malygos Druid drops his cards very fast. You can drop your cast very fast, and then there is synergy of just playing this card for 10 mana, Innervate, Naturalize, GG. So the problem is a little bit that you have to maybe get rid of the cards in your hand. There is like, you can also combine this card with Cataclysm, what is kind of like a funny way of making it work. Play, get this card on the board, play your Cataclysm, destroy the board, destroy your hand, and hey, we can just make it work. I think there's a lot of benefit for this card in the late game as also additional win condition. I really like this card. I really gotta definitely make this card work, guys. I won't stop till I make this card work. I'm very excited for this card, and I think there can be some mechanics where we will see decks that are gonna be very fast in drawing, and where you drop this boy at turn 10 and you say, bro, if you don't have anything, you gotta have a problem. And with cards like Naturalize, or cards that also can kill it directly, I think there is some things possible. So, gonna be a very, very cool card. Mecha'thun is back, guys. Mecha'thun is back. And hey, do you know what even synergizes better, guys, with Mecha'thun? What if you can win the game twice? Trigger a friendly minion's death rattle twice. What if you play this on Mecha'thun? You win the game twice. Well, that's already an effect that you can make maybe work. But also, well, let's take a little bit of a more realistic review on this row card. 5 mana, trigger a friendly minion's death rattle twice. So, a solid card, a very busted card if you can make this work on your cube. Because if you make this work on your cube, guys, you suddenly gain twice the death rattle, and you still have the cube left. Very, very solid card in that way. Very high value card, but also very expensive card. We know that we have cards like Playdead that are very strong, but they are very cheap. This card needs to have like a death rattle sticking on the board, and then it works. So the effect is very strong, but the card is very expensive, and I think that's the problem for this card. 5 mana is very expensive. Like, how often are death rattles sticking that are, and then you can follow it up by a 5 mana card? I think it's too hard to make work. It's just too expensive. It can be very strong, but situational spells are very hard to make work, and this is a situational spell that is okay but not insane, and then the card is always a little bit like, yeah, hard to make work. Next up is another epic here for the Druid, a 7 mana 4/4. At the end of the turn, reduce the cost of a random minion in your hand by 7. So not by 1, not by 2, not by 3, not by 4, not by 5, not by 6. No, by 7. Wow. So I'm not sure if this card is gonna see play because it's a very slow card. But if you can make this card work, guys, I kind of see this as a card that can be a replacement for the Twig in like a Malygos Druid, where you don't want to play Twig because there is too much weapon hate going on, and suddenly you play this card and you just make your Malygos cost 2 mana. What is very insane. So there's a lot of OTK potential you can make this card very busted with, and it's also an end of the turn effect that can make it happen twice. But just play this card on 7, get a very insane reducement on your Malygos or your Lich King, and the card can be very strong. So this is a really, it kind of is like an Emperor Torison effect, just on 1 minion. But we know how crazy Emperor Torison was. And this is a card that definitely fits in the same category. This is a very strong card. We should not underestimate this card because it's a 7 mana 4/4. Druid can handle a card that is a little bit slow or loses a little bit of tempo because it can swinging around. And just get yourself a 1 mana Lich King, getting yourself a 2 mana Malygos, getting yourself a 2 mana Oakheart. Things like that are OP. So very strong card, and cards like this, the cards like this are either miss or hit. But I definitely think this card is a hit. I definitely think this card it can be, also with the current power of Druid, cards like this can make it very, very strong. So I think this card is gonna get played, and I feel this card will make Druid definitely be at the best of the meta, where it might already be. But even it might be a very solid inclusion in current Druid decks. Next up, one of the, if I would say, I would rate, and with not seeing every card yet in the expansion yet, one of the probably most, or I would rate it top 5 cards of the expansion, even not seeing every card yet. The Soularium. It's a 1 mana spell for the Warlock, legendary spell. Draw 3 cards. At the end of the turn, discard them. 1 mana, draw 3 cards, guys. That is insane. At the end of the turn, you discard them, and that's probably a little bit of a more negative effect. But think for this card about like a cheap Zoo deck. Play this card whenever, like at turn 7, turn 8, and then you suddenly draw 3 cards and you instantly play these 3 cards. It's a very strong refiller, and 1 mana draw 3, guys, is very strong. It's I think this has, like, there is not much benefit in the discard mechanic yet for Warlock. Yeah, there is this discard Warlock meme, but that is not, discard Warlock is not really a thing. But just discard already, just 1 mana draw 3 cards is so good for Warlock, for a Zoo Warlock or a Temple Warlock, that I think you just want to play that card, this card, just for that reason. You play it in your Zoo at like a little bit of the mid to end game. You play this card, you only play like cheap cards, and you just play, even if you only play 2 cards, if it is a 1 mana draw 2, guys, it's already very good. So it's a very, very, very strong card here for the Warlock. This card is pretty busted in my opinion. For cards that draw 1 mana draw so much, and if you can just play at least 2 cards of them directly, you already get so much value. Very good card for Zoo when you're getting out of cards to play. I rate this card very high. Next up, Arcane Dynamo. 6 mana 3/4. Battlecry, discover a spell that costs 5 or more. So it as it discovers a spell, the range on this card is insane because there are so many spells, guys. There are so many spells to discover here that I think the range is too wide to see any play at all in Constructed. The way that Constructed works is that you need consistency in your deck to stay up with like other meta decks, and this card just doesn't provide it. On the other side, it's definitely a card that you're gonna pick quite some in Arena, as cards like this are always very strong in Arena. Discover is very strong in Arena. Get your 6 mana 3/4, Discover and Flame Strike, and let's go. So in that way, I think it can be a very good Arena card. In Constructed, there are a lot of cards that can just draw your spells more consistently, and you don't really want to go on the Discover line. So I don't see that being a thing, but I definitely see this card being a thing in a more Arena thing, where it's just a very solid pick on playing this on 6, get your Flame Strike at 7, and let's keep it going. Here, next up is the Omega card for the Shaman. The Omega card for the Shaman is the Omega Mind. 2 mana 2/3. Battle Cry. If you have 10 mana crystals, your spells have lifesteal this turn. So, stat line on this card is already alright. A 2 mana 2/3. So we have a 2 mana River Crocolisk here for the Shaman. As with a bonus effect of you have 10 mana crystals, your spell have lifesteal this turn. It's a Battle Cry for this turn, but lifesteal can be a decent mechanic. It can also maybe be a decent card, guys, for... nah, it's not for Shudderwock, right? No, luckily not. It's a little bit of an... Like, the thing is, this card is just okay, because it's a 2 mana 2/3. I just don't see enough ways yet to make this lifesteal really being a very strong thing. Because you need to have a decent board and then you need to lifesteal. But if you have a decent board, you often really need lifesteal because you are already the guy that is dominating the game. If it could deal like some additional damage or something, or it had like maybe having also your spells gain rush, like, I mean, it has like a little bit of synergy with spells. Maybe you can play it with like Volcano and then not play Healing Rain, and then it can be very good. I guess there is some synergy with like Lightning Storm too. So the card is definitely a very... It's kind of like a Harazil in a way. And that's actually okay. I can actually see this card work, because Harazil was also a very good card in a more combo-oriented Shaman. Shaman has a lot of ways to deal a lot of board damage. It's actually a decent card in Shudderwock if it works really well with these spells too. So maybe it's a card, guys, that can make Shudderwock Shaman a little bit better. How awesome. I actually think it's pretty good with Shudderwock. So yeah, we'll see. I can see this being... It's kind of like a Harazil, and Harazil was a very decent card too. So we can maybe see this card work. Next up, where we have seen already a lot of mechs revealed, guys, we also got our crap for the mechs. Well, it doesn't say crap, but it is the MPB Operative Battle Cry Destroy a Mech. So if we will ever get, guys, insanely OP mechs, guys, that will become insane and get an insane stat line, well, the counter is there already. We got our crap. Destroy a Mech. 5 mana 3/3. So the stat line on this card is very weak. Like, this stat line is pretty bad. But it has a powerful effect. So this card we will not see play in like any way besides a meta where we have like Mech Warrior, Mech Hunter, Mech Paladin, or whatever, where the meta is made around mechs. Because otherwise the stat line is just too weak for this card, and you can just play some single removal. 5 mana 3/3 is like worth 2 mana, so you overpay this card by 3 mana for a Destroy a Mech effect. And the effect is just very situational, so it has to be a way where there have to be a lot of mechs in the meta to make it work. You can maybe destroy your own Mecha'thun with it, but that's like, I guess, a thing. But it's gonna be a card that we will not see play. The card is just too expensive, and it will be a tech card that we will see play if the meta is really a lot of mechs. Because if you compare this to an Golakka Crawler, an Hungry Crab, these cards are you overpay by nothing or 1 mana. This card you overpay by 3 mana. So yeah, we'll see, but currently no. Alright guys, that was the card review for today. Hope you liked the review, taking a little look, and I hope you are as excited as me for the Boomsday. The Boomsday coming in 1 week, guys. Very, very excited. And hopefully we're gonna get a lovely expansion. I can't wait anymore. And getting the more cards we see, the more excited I get.